Hi there, my name is Kobe Kingsford and I am filming on my iPhone 7 and sitting on my bedroom floor. Currently, this video will be unedited and it will probably be a bit of a rant, but that's just kind of easier, because of the content or the topic of this video, I suppose. So, recently in the LGBTQ plus community, or rather more specifically the trans community online, and in general, I guess, there has been a discussion regarding some rather controversial topics. And because of that, a lot of you guys have asked me what my opinion is on those topics. And usually I try and not talk about stuff like that too much because I'm the kind of person who I'm kind of apologetic regarding my opinion. I'm scared of offending someone. And I'm not very assertive and stuff like that. But at the same time, I do feel like it's healthy to voice your opinion, and it's healthy to be able to partake in a discussion, even if the other person strongly disagrees with you. As long as everyone's respectful, I feel like it can be very, very giving, and also by understanding the other person's point of view, you will also be able to create stronger arguments against them. So there's that. No, but really, I do think that taking part in this discussion can really help me understand why people think the way they do, and hopefully some people will understand why other people like me think the way that they do. And feel free to start a discussion or continue the discussion rather in the comments, but please again be respectful and try your very best to be open-minded. So what we are discussing is, do I think that you need dysphoria to be trans, as well as my opinion on non-binary genders and how many genders I think there are, and just that kind of juicy stuff regarding transgender and gender issues. So right off the bat, I do think that you need dysphoria to be trans. So I'm first going to explain what dysphoria is. Dysphoria is what makes you aware that your gender assigned at birth is not the gender that you identify as. So in transgender individuals, this can be felt in a number of ways. It can cause people to feel very, very, very severe anxiety and depression. It can cause eating disorders and suicidal thoughts. But it does vary a lot, and in some cases it just makes people feel uncomfortable or sad, but it's not really anything super intense that makes them want to kill themselves. And this can be felt about, I suppose, anything that has to do with your biological gender, and that makes you, or that forces you into your biological gender, if that makes sense, or that your biological gender relates to you, or biological sex. So it can be your body, for example, your secondary sex characteristics, your body parts. I'm going to use myself as an example. I was assigned female at birth. That is my biological sex, but I identify as male. I am a boy. I live my life as a boy, and I feel very, very, very bad about the parts of my body that makes me look like a girl, because I don't think that I should look that way. It doesn't, my mind sees my body in a different way than my body actually is. Like, I am aware of what my body looks like, but I feel like it would better suit me if it looked a different way, if I had a completely flat chest, no hips, and stuff like that. But it doesn't only have to be felt regarding or about revolving body parts, but also how society treats you, I suppose. Not in the sense of like sexism. Obviously, if a woman was treated lesser than a man, or vice versa, anyone would feel bad. But regarding if someone were to call you a gender that you didn't identify as, like if someone called me a girl, I would feel very, very, very bad. And that is basically what dysphoria is. It just kind of tells you, like, oh, this doesn't feel right to me, so there must be something else going on. And I watched Sam Collins' videos on this, and in the follow-up video he made, he talked about how someone used the argument that you don't need gender dysphoria because you feel gender euphoria. And he also said that gender euphoria must be rooted in some kind of gender dysphoria. So I'll just use, again, me as an example. Growing up, I had a lot of, like, self-esteem issues and stuff like that, but I am not one of those trans people who knew from the age of 3 that they were a boy. I never really felt like I fit in and stuff like that, but I didn't really know what was up until I turned 13 and puberty hit, and I noticed that I started to feel very horrible about things, and then I discovered what transgender was and that I could transition into being a male. Well, no, obviously I can't change my chromosomes and stuff like that, but to live my life as a guy, or at least not a girl, because I identified as non-binary at first. And then, although I, pre that knowledge, didn't know what those feelings I was experiencing were, when I had experienced feeling happier by expressing myself as a guy rather than a girl, I could kind of name those feelings and be like, oh yeah, okay, that was dysphoria. And for someone to not feel any dysphoria, that means that they feel completely content with their sex and their gender assigned at birth, because you wouldn't feel any dysphoria, you wouldn't feel any bad feelings or odd feelings or uncomfortable feelings or any kind of discontent with your gender assigned at birth and being called that. So gender euphoria must be caused by, and gender euphoria is basically the opposite of dysphoria. It's that you feel very good when someone addresses you in the right way. So, yeah. But gender euphoria must be caused by some underlying dysphoria, because if you were a female and someone called you a male, but you didn't experience any dysphoria, then someone calling you a male wouldn't make you feel euphoric, it would make you feel very bad. That's when you would feel the dysphoria, because someone addressed you wrong. Sorry, does this make sense? Hopefully it does. Now, for non-binary people, I have been very much confused about this for years and where I stand. Obviously, I respect people and the way they want to be treated, but there are just so many different definitions of non-binary. Now, I've kind of come to the conclusion that, in my head, it makes sense that some non-binary people can be trans, but being non-binary doesn't necessarily mean that you're trans. Some non-binary people identify as non-binary gender non-conforming, which basically to them means that they feel okay in the body that they're in. They don't feel dysphoric about it. They also feel okay with where they stand socially, and they acknowledge that they are female and are female in society as well, but they feel very detached from gender roles on either side. So if, again, they're a female, they may feel very uncomfortable having long hair, and they may feel very uncomfortable dressing in a stereotypically feminine way, and they just feel like they can't really relate to the or fully relate to and associate with gender roles and what is expected of either gender. So therefore they choose to identify as non-binary, and they are kind of like a place in the middle, but they don't wish to really transition socially or change their body in a way, because they don't feel really dysphoric about it. They just don't really feel like they can relate to gender, so they'd just rather be themselves. Which I can understand, especially in today's society where gender is so fluid, and gender roles really are starting to disappear a bit. Like, it's not like the woman is at home cooking anymore in the Western world, hopefully. That said, I also do believe that some non-binary people can be transgender, meaning that or they differentiate to the first example where they do feel uncomfortable with their body and they do feel dysphoric. Some people confuse gender dysphoria and gender dysmorphia. A lot of people have body issues, especially in the transgender and especially the non-binary community, and a lot of people unfortunately end up confusing hating their body with gender dysphoria. And one of the issues of the internet today is that resources are very easily accessible. This is both an issue as well as a very, very good thing, because for me, a transgender individual, I'm very grateful that I could find the information that I did. But at the same time, if you are a female and you're not stereotypically feminine, and you might be gay, and you also hate your body, it's very easy to go online and be like, okay, I check all these points for gender dysphoria, so I might be trans then. What is dangerous with that is that if you go through the process that is expected of you if you are trans, is that at the end of that, you will have, if you have like gone hormones and gotten surgeries and stuff, you will end up feeling dysphoric because you didn't experience dysphoria earlier, you just hated your body. And that is why psychological help or psychological examination, I suppose, is very important, because a lot of the diagnostic what's it called? Sorry, English is not my first language, but a lot of the diagnostic criteria that you need to fulfill in order to be diagnosed with gender dysphoria can also be kind of confused with anxiety, depression, eating disorders, and body dysmorphia, which also can be a result of dysphoria, so it's very hard to know what caused what, and that is why being looked at by a professional first before going into treatment is so important. I kind of I was talking about non-binary people and I kind of started talking about something entirely different. But what I was going to say is that I do believe that some non-binary people are in fact trans, because again, they differentiate from the first example in the way that they do experience dysphoria, they do wish to transition either physically or socially or in both ways. And there hasn't really been done much scientific research on that. A lot of people say that they can't prove non-binary identities to be real. I think that depends on whether the individual is trans non-binary or just identify as non-binary because they don't feel like they can really relate to any gender in society today or how it is portrayed. In transgender individuals who are binary, so female to male or male to female, there has been scientific research done where you can see a physical difference in a person's brain, and you can see the physical symptoms of the mental illness that is gender dysphoria. And that was also a question I had: do I think that gender dysphoria is a mental illness? Yes, I do. And it is classified as one, and it is how you are diagnosed and how you're able to get treatment. Most places. Some places they don't even diagnose people, they just are able to go to a gender clinic and be prescribed testosterone after filling out a form, which I want to talk about later. But yeah, so kind of what my theory is that and this, no scientific research to I have none of that to back up this theory, but what makes sense in my brain is that if you were to look at a non-binary trans person who experiences gender dysphoria, maybe you would be able to see that in the brain. And just what I kind of think is that maybe that individual was supposed to be trans or like all the way, but that the brain didn't go all the way. I don't know if that is a correct theory. That is just kind of how I think of non-binary. And or non-binary individuals who experience dysphoria. Yeah, I don't know. Again, just a theory. But what I was going to say was, regarding the clinics where you can just go and get your hormones just like that. That is incredibly dangerous, especially when you're under the age of 18. When you're over the age of 18, it's kind of like, it's still dangerous, but do what you want with your life. Like, you're an adult, it's up to you. But under the age of 18, I do think that is very dangerous, because I know that people hate when they are told this, but in your teenage years and growing up, you will be confused about your identity. And you will go through phases. And obviously, being trans isn't always a phase, but based on personal experience, I'm soon 17 now. I turned 17 in September, and I became part of the trans community online when I was 13 years old. I made a lot of friends back then, and after, how long has it been? Like, at least 3 years, a lot of those people have realised that they didn't identify the same way that they did when they were 13, which is completely okay. But what is dangerous is that when you go online, again, resources are so easily accessible, and I don't mean to generalize, but I see this a lot in the non-binary community. People talk about hormones and surgery as if they were accessories, and as if it was a piece of clothing that you just put on and a way of expressing yourself. I see people who don't experience dysphoria that is bad enough that they actually desperately need this medical treatment that will alter your body and have significant and long-lasting effects on your body, and they also have health risks and stuff like that. I see individuals who don't experience dysphoria to the point where they actually desperately need hormones, go on hormones, and then go off again because they start to experience dysphoria because they didn't experience it before. And it's become common for people online to be like, yeah, you know, like, having a deeper voice would be cool sometimes. I'm not saying that all non-binary people are like this, by the way, but yeah, it would be nice, but like, I don't really know, but at the same time, it would be kind of cool to have a deeper voice sometimes. And then they hear that hormones are so easily accessible, but they're not really prepared for all the changes, because testosterone and estrogen, estrogen will make you into a woman, your identity will be the same, but it will make you go through female puberty, which was my example. Testosterone will make you go through male puberty, and a lot of people, they want like a deeper voice or something like that, and they are not prepared for the other changes. And when the body changes, again, as I mentioned earlier, because they didn't experience any previous dysphoria, they experience dysphoria after the changes have happened, because then they feel dysphoric, because then it doesn't match how they feel on the inside, truly. What was I going to say? Oh, Jesus Christ, I can't remember. I completely lost my train of thought. But anyway, that is why it is so dangerous. And that is also when a lot of people realise that they didn't actually experience gender dysphoria, but they experienced gender dysmorphia, or they had an eating disorder, or they were very insecure about the body or something like that. And then they realised, oh, I'm not actually a male, or I'm not actually anything other than a female. I just am a very insecure girl. And I'm not saying that this is the case for all people who are non-binary or who identify as trans at an early age. I'm just saying that this is why it is so important to get help from a professional first, and that you give this time, and that you do not rush into it. And of course, sometimes professionals can misdiagnose things, but then at least there will be an extra kind of, it's just nice to kind of rely on that a little bit, at least, and yeah. Now, regarding labels, I'm just going to talk about this really quickly because this video is very long. Do I think that there are 100,000 genders? No, I do not think so. I think that there are male, female, and people who don't identify as either. So non-binary, or those who are just outside of male and female. What I think is that these days, and I'm gonna sound so old, a lot of people really overthink their identities, and their gender identities and sexuality. The difference between sexuality and gender identity, though, in terms of there being 100,000 labels, is that with sexuality it doesn't really matter. I personally think it's unnecessary, but it doesn't really matter. It doesn't have any significant effects on you. With gender, however, it is dangerous because, as I talked about earlier, a female or a male who don't kind of live up to the standards of the gender roles that come with the gender they were assigned at birth, when they go online, they may find a label that fits them, and in a sense I can understand why labels are important to some people, because they want to feel a sense of belonging and they want to feel validated in the way that they are different and may differ from most girls or boys around them. But it's dangerous because you can be labelled as trans when you have a gender that differs from your biological sex, and then again you can be sort of peer pressured into going trans, which is what happened to, oh god, I don't want to pronounce his name wrong, Gender Moran, I think that's his name. He didn't identify as anything but a male, but basically he's a very, very feminine gay boy who admittedly does look like a girl. He has long hair, dresses in girls' clothing, and online people told him that he would look so good as a girl and that he made a video about this, like crying, and it was really hard for him because people kind of convinced him online that he was trans because he was a feminine guy, which really annoys me because it's so hypocritical. Because online people are like, oh yeah, you can be a feminine guy, you can be a masculine girl, just be yourself. But as soon as someone is that, people want so badly to be an ally, and then they kind of pressure them into going all the way, and labeling them as all sorts of things. But basically what happened to Trevor was that he was people online sort of convinced him that he would look better as a girl and that he should go all the way, and he had a huge identity crisis, and he was very, very, very close to going through medical transition to transition into a female, and this was very hard for him, obviously, but then he realized last minute that he was fine with who he was fine with his body, he liked being a guy, and stuff like that. But I don't know if Trevor is very insecure, but sadly, that is what happens to a lot of people who are very insecure, who are different, who are a feminine guy or a masculine girl. They feel like they should go all the way, and because they hate the body and they are, say, a feminine guy, they think that, oh, that must mean that I'm trans because I hate my body and I'm feminine, so I must actually be a girl. And that is, again, why it is so important to get medical and professional and psychological help. Well, at least talk to someone. Talk about your feelings. Because online, again, people talk about these things like it's no big deal. And I personally like to try and kind of normalize being transgender, but at the same time, it's not normal. I don't want to normalize it in the sense that people think that as soon as you kind of, how you feel kind of differs from how you're supposed to feel in society regarding gender roles and stuff like that. That doesn't mean that you're trans. And I don't want to tell anyone how to feel. If you want to identify as something, then identify as it. But I'm saying this for people's own safety, I suppose. It's just that I'm worried because a very, very small percentage of the population actually is trans. Again, it is a mental illness. It's not supposed to be this way. Like, experiencing gender dysphoria and stuff like that. I feel like being non-binary in the sense that you don't really feel like you can relate to either gender is it's a different thing. But going through physical medical transition is a really big deal, and it's not normal. There's nothing wrong with it, but it's not common. And the last thing I'm going to say is again regarding labels. I feel like people really mix up personality and gender expression and interests with gender itself. Online, you see a lot of I feel like a boy, or I feel like a girl, or I feel like neither. And when I questioned or started to question my gender, I was very confused because people online were talking about, again, how they felt like a gender. Well, I didn't feel like anything. And then sometimes I felt more masculine, and then sometimes I felt more feminine, and I thought like, oh, maybe that means I'm gender fluid then, which is what I identified as at first. And I would wake up in the morning, and I would be so stressed about this, and I would ask myself, first thing, do I feel like a boy today? Do I feel like a girl today? But now that I've gotten older, I realised that gender isn't really about how you feel. It is about how you feel comfortable being addressed, and it is also, for the most part, about how you feel comfortable with your body looking, resembling a certain sex. And if you want to base your gender on your personality and your interests and stuff like that, which kind of relate to what gender roles you best fit, then go ahead. I'm not going to tell you what to do. Just like look out for transition and stuff like that, because it is like a very serious thing. And please don't let or make people online or let people online tell you what you should do in terms of transitioning and stuff, because that's your personal thing. But yeah, just an example of that is I remember getting this comment once that said, "Oh my god, I'm so gender fluid. Earlier today, I was in the classroom gossiping with a group of girls, and I felt so feminine and like a girl in that moment. And then later that day, I was on the bus with a bunch of guys making dick jokes, and I felt so masculine and like a guy in that moment." Again, if you want to define your gender like that, then I'm not going to tell you what to do. But in terms of actual gender, the sex of your brain doesn't change from one moment to another like that. So again, like, watch out regarding transition and stuff like that. And talk to someone, and don't rush into anything. And live your life the way you want to. And I can understand why some people don't want to anything to do with gender and gender roles in society and stuff like that. But just when it comes to medical things, it's a very serious thing, and people need to realize that. So this video is so long, but I think I'm gonna upload it because I said some things that kind of are important to me. And again, these are just my opinions, and I'm not saying that I'm right in everything. I'm only barely 17, so there's lots of things I don't know, but this is just kind of how I feel about things. Hope you found this video interesting. Please let me know what you think in the comments down below. Stay safe and eat, drink, and do not hurt yourselves, and remember that you are so much more than you could ever realize. Seriously, thank you so much for watching, if I haven't said that already, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care. Goodbye.